but I will just dare to bring my point of view on trauma studies. Basically, I have worked more on memory narratives and from perspective of transgenerational, and this lecture today is basically inspired from uh, from the article that I have written few years back. So I'll just give you a small hint of this that might help you in reading the text, uh, memory narratives or trauma narratives. Because as a literary scientist, our job is to analyze text, and this job is really tough. You know, we need to find ways how to analyze a text. We can so this that I wish to propose, I always concentrate on narratological approach. Some people always, you know, they criticize narratology for being so, you know, for being mainly structuralist. Whereas when it comes to trauma studies that are so you know, heavily based on emotions and feelings, so people always criticize structuralists that it's just, it might be just line counting now, but it's not really the it's not the facts. You know, a structuralist is narratology is not just about line counting, but it provides you the tools or the strategies that narrator has chosen for his work or her work, and those strategies are something that helps us in recognizing where emotion lies. So when we talk first the term transgenerational, when we have this term transgenerational, automatically one thing that comes to our mind that we are talking about a very big time span, right? It can be minimum of 3 generations, or it can be fourth generation, because nowadays we have this, in German we call it Enkelkinder generation. Na? It's like grandchildren generation or the fourth generation and maybe fifth generation, but we have like a very very long span of time to deal with. And for authors and narrators, you know, as a artist, now as a literary artist, they don't have this liberty that they can write 5,000 pages for a story that is 100 years long, right? So they have to somehow devise a strategy where they can talk about 3 generations and still remain in the page limit, let's say 250 pages, or maximum if the like publisher is kind enough, then 500 pages, right? So like Gunther Mueller also says, it is absolutely impossible to talk about a complete lifespan of 3 generations, and it also doesn't make sense. Then it won't be a work of art if we are just documenting everything that has happened. So for this very purpose, the narrator, he always finds out strategies. What strategies should I apply where I can cover all 3 generations, and I can also convey what I want to. You know, the purpose of transgenerational narrative is not simply talking about 3 generations, but also bridging the gap, the generational gap, or establishing an understanding between the generation. So for this, in narratology, we have this, you can call it tension, but I rather call it this interplay between succession of narrating, um, temporal succession of narrating, that is Zeitfolge des Erzählen, and the temporal succession of narrated event. You know, this interplay between both gives us, you know, an understanding of what is it that we are going to talk about and how I am going to talk about. So obviously there would be possible omissions. Now there would be possible maybe author will focus on something more and then delete absolutely something, you know, you know, omit something absolutely, or talk about maybe uh, more reflections more, right? And will maybe shorter the description, etc. So these are just some of the strategies, that everyone uses. Uh, any author would use it. But with trauma narration, it's little tricky. We talk about trauma, but if you read those narrations, if you read those novels, you will never find description of that traumatic event, right? Whole story will roam around that, yes, some terrible event has happened, but it just, we need to imagine what that event could have been. Now this the victim or the character would never really talk about. So it's like an event that is so important is absolutely absent from the text. Now then what we do, what strategies, how can we deal with such kind of narrative? So if we focus on the temporal position, we say that every narrative has a temporal position. We're talking about 3 generations, but our concept of time for literature is absolutely different. We don't talk about clock time, like past, present, future don't really work for literature. Now if I say, if I use the word now I am here, so I need to read maybe 5 pages before and 5 pages after to understand what is this now. This now can be nothing more than just her physical, her corporeal position, of corporeal position of that candidate. But at the same time you will say ki that person, mentally that person is somewhere else, right? So we always have this problem, like how do we deal with this concept of time? We can't rely on clock time or other ways of time that we generally use to quantify. So in literature, we say that time is not observable, but we can manifest it. In literature, it is the event that decides the time of the time in the story. Like we talk, you must be knowing about this concept of story time and discourse time. And this interplay of story time and discourse time is something that brings the this tension, and this tension is something that generates a kind of rhythm for the text. We can say that text is fast, we can say the text is slow, or that person has skipped something. But skipping something we understand not simply like omission, but more like an strategy to show memory gaps. So much like gender, we also say that time is also culturally constructed. Our understanding of time would be different from maybe Amy's understanding, or the people who live in Arctic areas, their understanding of time is absolutely different. But time in literature, as I have said, that it is based on the event. In the event decides the time, what would be the time. So story time that we have talked, you generally all know, story time is basically created through language. It's a craft, and because what kind of word will be narrated depends on how it is narrated. This interplay of story time and discourse time, how you are, story time would be, this story and discourse time would be more like, this interplay would be, story time would be like what, about what we are saying, and discourse would be how we are talking about something, right? And this interplay creates a tension, and Spannung in German we call it. For this, I will not bore you with the theoretical details, but I will just mention the most famous like Bible for narratology is by Gerard Genette, and his book The Erzählung. Here he talks about 3 types mainly three types of rhythms. He says there is one duration, order, and frequency. Frequency would be like how many time you are, the event is emerging, how many frequency. Na? And order would be analepsis and prolepsis. Analepsis is, like that has something that has happened already, and prolepsis would be like something that is about to happen. And duration, that is completely, responsible for creating the rhythm in the text. When we read the text, we say it was very boring, it was slow, nothing was happening. So this happens because of the duration. And duration is later on categorized in four parts. So ellipsis would be something that is absolutely missing, but this missing is, it doesn't mean that it is not important. Especially for trauma narrative, these ellipses are the most important, or the deliberate omissions. And pause is when, you see, these are, I've written it in German, but it's like story time, and ZG is time of discourse time. Okay, so this the pause would be if the story time is much bigger than the discourse time, then there would be a pause. Scene would be, scene is basically understood more like when both story time and discourse time are same, more like cricket commentary. Na? So it's like narrator is saying the same thing that is, going to happen. And summary is like summarizing something. For example, if I ask Atnu, what have you, how was, what have you studied during 5 days? He said, nothing. Na? So that would be more like summary. And if I ask the same question to Shreja, she might, stretch it. Now that would be like unnecessary rubber stretching. She would say, we read this, we did this, and weather was like that, and this is all like rubbers. We call it more. Uh, that's like rubber stretching, I call it. But so when we talk about we talk about time, and also with the memory, and those things, they don't go hand in hand, right? It is possible that we remember something that has happened 10 years ago, yeah, very vividly, and it is possible that we cannot remember something that has happened just 5 minutes ago. Right, so our memory and time, they have always this. They are not dependent. They are not interdependent, so to say. Especially, and units such as years, months, etc. They don't. They are not really useful unit for us as a literary scientist. Where Estridal says that act of remembering is very much like act of narration. Now, how we remember something is exactly like how we narrate a story, right? We don't narrate from day 1 to day 100, right? We narrate, there would be like analepsis, there would be prolepsis, we'll skip something and then we will come back to that story. And remembering is exactly like that. We can't remember something. If I ask you, okay, you just summarize what have, just remember what you did during 5 days. And then it's possible that while you summarize something, and once you go back and you look at the chai, and then you said the chai at the conference was very bad, right? You immediately make a connection by looking at something. So that was like, it's more like episodic memory, of course, what you call it. But this is how also our narration works. Now, narration is also you bring up things, or you bring up events that you cannot always fix them at a certain place. Maybe in the chronology, or in Ryan Folger, it will not fit. So it's remembering is very much like an anachronic process, something that is not chronic, that is not chronological. So, and reconstructing the past is also jumping from here to there. And when I say about past, so as a literary scientist, I would say maybe science people might say कि past is something that has gone and it cannot be changed. But for literature, we change past every day. We change past through our stories. Now, the way we narrate past, we change it every day. So, so this is just, there would be like forwarding, skipping, and rewinding the events beyond their temporal limitations. So I'll quote this. The relevance, as I said earlier, the relevance of the generational approach in trauma study is highlighted by the fact that it places the concrete temporality of humans, including their generational baggage, into the context of general historical change, which the individual may face passively as well as actively. And this historical baggage is something that that the narrator also carries and, on his shoulder as a burden, that he has to talk about such events, and it depends on his craft, or his craftsmanship, how he's going to uh, write them or explain them. The concept of generation as zeitgeist depend constructs through which people as member of a specific age group are located or locate themselves historically, and accordingly create a we feeling, right? And expressions such as third generation literature or grandchildren's literature or chain of memory occupy a prominent position among the memory literature of World War II, and of course also with the trauma literature. They examine how the memories of the former group were transmitted to the later. So I will not explain all the rhythms that I have mentioned, but because you all are waiting for the certificates, so, and I understand, I would do the same, but I will just explain one topic, ellipsis, that I feel it's very important for trauma studies. So ellipsis is basically, if you see from structuralist point of view, then it refers to the narrative phenomena when the story time is significantly bigger. Now, like talking about 5 days, and Atnu summarizes it in one word, saying nothing, right? So that would be like absolutely ellipsis. Or it's possible that he just remains mum. Now he doesn't speak at all. So it's significantly bigger in comparison to the discourse time, resulting in acceleration of the pace. Affect the time of a narrative and its relationship to the plot. Such ellipses or time jumps, we call it time jumps, can have both transfiguring, confusing, and enlightening effects of the reader. On the reader, sorry. Janet says ellipses are the most opaque silence. Yeah, and this is something that we can use for our, that is very much evident in trauma studies, something that a work that is so important has, an event that is so important has not been talked about. Dorothy and Michelle Bessler, they summarize when Janet's work, they say Janet focuses on summary, because summary means when if the event is not so important, the author just summarizes it, and if event is very important, then author generally describe it in detail. But this is, I would say, it's a wrong definition. Now it doesn't hold truth for trauma studies. In trauma is present everywhere between the lines on each and every page, but this event is absolutely, description of that event is absolutely missing from the text. So I'll give you just one example, of like such examples you will find in every German novel where this thing was there. Even the soldiers, the soldiers' family who have participated in the war, now who were there at the Nazi side that time, and if you go back and ask them, they remain silent. Now they are not, they don't talk about, they are also, they are traumatized, they have seen horrors of the war, but it's something that they don't want to talk, they don't want to discuss it. The silence is something that is very much, for Schweigen, is something that is very much evident in German literature. So here a child, she says, stories were rarely heard in the big house. There wasn't much talking, and not many questions were asked. If at all, then instead of explanation, there was always silence as a reflex. If you want to ask, yeah, what happened during the war, why do you behave like that, or what problem you had, there would always be just a silence. If it were a valid answer to the children's questions, there was a silence that one wanted to expose, a silence that made one angry. Every child senses the lie in the unsaid, and of course the fear. So this is from Hetzklappen von Johnson and Johnson, and it's a teenager girl she talks about. And just one example, I would say how this silence is actually depicted, the behavior of parents. Parents will fight only at the night. Now when everybody is sleeping, then it's time for parents to fight. Now because they don't want to give image, bad image in front of their kids, thinking that now they are asleep, we can fight, we can abuse each other, or we can, but children is, the kids are always at the door listening everything. The parents fought only at night under cover of darkness, as if they believed the late hours hid them from the world. Alma often stood listening at the door, a small ghost with bare feet, a pale child in pale clothes, who was only driven back to bed by loud footsteps or that tiredness that made you frizzy inside and out. The parents spoke like strangers behind closed doors, and she would have loved to throw open the white wooden doors and see if their faces have also changed. Are they same person that she sees every day, or in the night they are different? For at night the rules of day were suspended. Now this whole act that parents are playing, and so this act is now in the night, they don't need to act anymore, they can be the real self. While Alma's father was an inconspicuous man by day, submitting to her mother's orderly system with irritating gratitude, always dearer to servant than master, so that it was easier to forget him than to think of him. At night he became loud and said. And her mother, this is a typical German woman, her mother remained silent in defense, because at night man is allowed to shout and she would remain silent, and her tight-lippedness could be heard through the walls. She was a meticulous person in a clinically clean house. This obsession with cleaning the house, it's also a psychological thing that people say it's all about their, they are worried about their image. What if someone comes to your house and sees the house is not in order? So this clinically clean house, where she dusted the shelves every Tuesday before the cleaning lady came every Wednesday. Even in front of cleaning lady, she does not want to give this impression that her house is dirty. A woman always controlled and always so kind, as if she had to not only make something right, but also make things right again. Now this obsession, Wiedergutmachen, that they can do something better again. Unsuited to any kind of argument, for accusations and differing opinions first made her inconsolable, then sick. And as if in punishment, she starved herself and for days swallowed only her size, otherwise she would not eat a single bite. Now, this is a story. These are the parents who have participated in war, and now kids can see how, they don't want to talk about the horrors, and in front of their kids also they need to present a particular image. And this child is, of course, she understands everything. So in this, the novel that I am talking about, we have here three generations. The first generation is who witnessed and made the war, is represented by a war traumatized grandfather and a grandmother marked by silence. The second generation is represented by Alma. All these observations were from her childhood. By Alma, the mother who has seemingly unfounded feelings of guilt. Now she belongs to second generation. Second generation has not participated in war, but I like some studies have shown that there have trauma can be genetically transferred, right? So somehow she sees things, she understands, she always have unfounded feeling of guilt, and she does not understand why she has not done anything wrong. Powerlessness and pain, while a grandchild is, and she has a baby who's suffering from this congenital analexia. This is a disease where you don't feel pain. Even if someone cuts your hand, you are bleeding, but you are not going to feel pain. So here it's more like, it's a representation of the third generation who is insensitive to pain. So the mother has to teach the child, if you are hurt, then you need to cry. Now it's almost like our generation. The first and third generation are thus depicted as being identical. The one who made the war and the third generation now who doesn't feel anything. And the grandson who is incapable of feeling pain has been trained to cry and react as if he is experiencing pain. Now, much like we don't know about certain sensitive topics, now we have no sympathy, to be honest, but then we know how to react. We have learned that act. If someone is talking about Holocaust, I know how to react, right? So this is the act that the third generation has learned. So in a way, if third generation is given the chance, they are going to do exactly the same what the first generation has already done. So just one paragraph, I really like it. So when Alma thought as a child, she imagined that war is like a magical machine into which people entered on one side and emerged on the other side, absolutely transformed. Strange and wrong. Anything could happen. Roles were reversed, identities confused, but one could not remain the same. That was the condition. If you are going to war, and then there would be changes. It's like machine. Those who volunteered as heroes might emerge as criminals, traitors, or victims. Those who had laid humiliated on the ground suddenly stood taller than anyone else. Now, soldiers who put down their weapons and said, we don't want to fire anymore, whom we are supposed to understand as coward, they turned out to be the heroes. Becoming either brave or cruel, and only the dead were all equally silent. It was only the dead, though there was no transformation for that. So it's a nice imagery by a teenager girl. So as an example of ellipsis, I have drawn example from the same novel. So you wish to read it? Like if someone asked today why grandfather was the way he was, grandmother would only answer, it was the war. She had no other explanation. The war had divided his life into a before and an after. So there was only this time zone. Before the war, he was a different person, and after the war. She knew the returnee, the prisoner of war, the survivor, got to know the murderer late in life from drunken confessions. But she never met the person before. Uh, Sorry, it should be, there shouldn't be no space in between. The uninjured, the innocent, who he might have been originally, she pieced together from stories, from his rarely shared memories, from the photographs of his youth, and the stories of all friends and relatives, and often she found it hard to believe it when a cousin said how happily they had played as boys, and that his grandfather had loved to sing so much that they called him Birdie when he was a child. Right, so here you see, should I read? It would be faster. So, here the novel addresses the like transference of war traumas and guilt complexes within the families. With the child on her lap who suffers from congenital anorexia, Alma sits at the ailing grandmother's bedside to find explanation in in her grandmother's stories for feelings of guilt and pain that have accompanied Alma throughout her life. The this extract illustrates a big temporal span con- uh, contraction through the insertion of memory content and memory gap in narration. If you see, like, she has covered a very big time. In this novel, the constructive function of memory lies not only in shaping the individual's character's personality and identity, but the representing content of the memory sets the rhythm for the narration. Thus, through the combination of images, metaphors, photographs, and oral stories, the tension between story time and discourse time occurs. This example covers an extended story time. The narrative voice chooses the past tense for the narration, but clearly hints at different time periods, while assuming an internal focalization for the narrative. The narration begins with the indication of time today, followed by the expression why grandfather was the way he was. The phrase conveys curiosity of accessing the memories of past events that shaped the grandfather's personality today. In response to the question, the grandmother offers only one explanation. She divides time not into past and present, but takes the war as the deciding yardstick for splitting time between a before and an after. The "and" after time is described with expressions such as the returnee, the prisoner of war, the survivors, and even murderers. Whereas a before time stands in strong contrast as it is presented with innocuous expressions such as the uninjured, the innocent. However, there are possible omissions in her story, the forgotten and repressed events that she does not remember or might not wish to remember. As to her, a before time appears like a fantasy. The word "maybe" insinuates that the existence of this a before time is doubtful, because she has to she has to see photos and listen to stories of others. She uses the cues of photographs as external memory to reconstruct a before time, while also putting together the stories and shared memories of the lost time. She unequivocally finds the oral narration of friends and family hard to believe, because the personality of grandfather in an after time does not match the description from a before time. The grandfather is described in before time as Birdie, in contrast to silent and serious person he is in an after time. The discrepancy only raises more doubts and confusion in the grandmother's mind. By splitting the time into two categories, a before and an after, the grandmother ignores the perception of time as three tensed category, that is past, present, future. The grandmother deliberately skips the memories of events such as marriage, the birth of their children, schools, etc., and focuses solely on the deciding event, that is the war. The ellipses says that can have this transfiguring and enlightening effect on the reader. The content of memory that do not advance the narrative in any way is absolutely disregarded in the above example. These ellipses, or rather the selective use of memory replays, help in accelerating the narrative pace. Apart from this, the function of external memory can also be seen here as firstly creating a better understanding of the character, and secondly in deviating the narrative flow. Lemmer describes the insertion of remembering in the text as bringing a piece of past into the present. The narrator does not live today but swings in a before and after time. And in this way, the narrator covers a more extensive time span, that is from the grandmother and grandfather's old age to their youth, as far back as the very childhood of the grandfather. Thus, the narration covers the three stages of life in few sentences. As a result, the story time is far longer in comparison to the discourse time. Janet defines this type of time contraction as implicit ellipses. He devised the formula for ellipses when the discourse time is absolutely zero and narrative time is infinite. In Janet's term, the most opaque silence in the retrospective section belongs to this type of narration. And the above example delineates the time contraction in a narrative, which is supported by the mention of selected external memories using cues from photographs to remember an entire lifespan in few sentences. Creating ellipses in the form of a memory gap provides the narrative with acceleration, that is speed in the narration. So in this process, remembering content assumes two main functions. First, it reconstruct the time as before and after, and second, it assigns new attributes to these two new time periods. So that's all from my side. So if you have questions. Or you wish, yeah. This one?
Oh, thank you. The parents fought only at night. You highlighted all of the places where night is repeated, for at night the rules were suspended. I think night is listed like 2 or 3 or 4 times. I don't know, is repeated. And I was interested in the fact that your opening remarks on Monday cited from Elie Wiesel's Night, which is like always in the back of the minds, I think, of Holocaust scholars. So I was wondering if that was like a presence in there, right? Like at night, there are all these like thoughts and secrets that have to do with Elie Wiesel's Night. Like the two texts are talking to each other. I was wondering.
Yeah, thank you so much. I must admit that I didn't think it that way, but this, like Elie Wiesel says, one night that is sealed 7 times, you cannot open. It will take a lot of time to open that night, and this night is something that she cannot forget. And here also, in trauma literature, we have always the night walking. Mother will walk at the night, and she will, she will start cleaning the house again, and she will do all this stuff. They underline that yes, there is something very wrong now, something very, that is troubling the mother. So I'll say that it's a very nice observation to connecting both the texts. I'm definitely, I'm sure that these two observations are talking. And I would say that when you gave this example of, um, you are not supposed to talk, you are not supposed to go outside, and you want to do this with the Holocaust narratives. So I absolutely agree with that point. Yes, it is very much reckon with the Holocaust narratives, and not just with the Holocaust survivors, but also those who have made war, you know like families who were parts, who were soldiers, who have participated as Nazi, and now they are going through this guilt, and it's like they don't know how to cope up, and the one thing that remains always is silence. Stay away from everything, don't talk, don't meet people, don't meet a stranger, just stay where you are, and just remain confined into doors. Yeah.
Hello, ma'am. Thank you for your lecture. I have one question. You just talked about this congenital analgesia, and you compared that it is in both the first generation and the third generation of Alma's parents as well as in her son. So her son is actually suffering from a disease, actually, this congenital analgesia, which he can't feel pain, and he has to perform whenever there is something which relates to pain.
Yeah.
But the parents of Alma, they don't have this disease. So they are conditioned to it, and why don't they feel pain? Like even physical or emotional.
It's hard to say that they don't feel pain. I think they feel so much of pain and guilt inside that they don't want to talk about it anymore. Like grandfather has become, silent, and they are living a normal life. Of course, on Sunday they get ein Kuchen, a cake and coffee. The whole family sits together. They eat it like a normal family. But inside, you understand that this guilt is hovering over their head.
But what I
And
wanted to say that these two things are totally different. Like they're not uh, not feeling pain as like the son. He actually is not feeling any pain, but they are feeling so much pain that they have become oblivious to it.
yes, you can say that. My observation was like it's like keeping grandfather and grandchildren as identical figures. Now it's like mirror image of each other. Now grandfather who has made war and now he's silent. So we don't know if he's traumatized or if there is something that he wants to hide or conceal. The like horrific acts he has done, and the child, like Alma is, like nurturing him in a way that if your hand is cut, then you are supposed to cry. Now she is making it more like an act, because if you don't cry and if the kid doesn't feel pain, it can be life threatening.
Also, one thing to bring back what we studied in Amar Sir's lecture, he was talking about numbness. So, is it that the grandfather has become so numb that he can no longer at least express how he's feeling the pain?
I would agree with that. Yeah. And you can call it numbness, or you can call it the silence prevailed in the family, or you can say confining, sealing everything, in a box that nobody can touch that box. So
Isolating oneself.
isolating. So these are all, terms that you can use if interrelated, I don't know, but they have some similarity, some connotation that brings you back.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. And in this novel, I didn't bring it, but there is also a quotation that says, uh, "What kind of human that child will become if he cannot feel pain." And he's learning the pain by an as an stage performance. So in that way, he might be identical with the grandfather.
This is what I wanted to add, that you said that what makes the first and the third generation very similar is because they are kind of putting up a performance. The grandfather knows, and he has been through the pain directly, so he knows how to hide it, while the son clinically does not know how to feel pain, so he's being taught to perform how to react when he's feeling pain. And I think the generation which is in real feeling the most pain is, I think, Alma's generation, who is stuck in between. So she does not have analgesia, she has not through been war, but she has this sense of guilt and helplessness. So I think she is stuck between the first and third generation and the most helpless among the three.
I absolutely agree with that. True. Thank you for that.
Good morning, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you so much for the lecture. Actually, I was thinking about the slides. We have got three major words: memory, past, and time. Like I have observed. So I was thinking, I feel that the difference between an animal or a human is basically what is related to past. An animal has no past, but the human has, and that what makes it a human, right? So I think a human being can't exist without the past. So what is the need of, and we know that if we have got the bad past or like horrible past, it turns into a trauma, right? So but the past is past, and like if we can't survive without it, so what is the need of eradicating the trauma rather than acknowledging it?
Well, thank you for this very nice observation. I absolutely agree with each word that you have said. I would say eradicating, I don't know if eradication is possible, but clinical studies have shown, like when we talk about something, if you go to psychiatrist, he would say, tell me, just speak. So these clinical studies have shown that when we speak about something, then the emotional content slowly goes down. The amount of emotion, with the time it goes down. It's possible that if today I ask you about something, you are very, very emotional about it. But when you try to, talk about it, try to say something about that event, it's possible that that emotional thing, emotions won't be that much. And that's why in trauma study, this is the biggest burden on authors. Like Kathy Garut says, it's a failure of language. Now the event, something so, that is something so humiliating. Now you can only express with this, for example, this obsession of the mother. Now this obsession of Alma, that no one should think that I am a bad person. Now no one should think that my house is not clean, or I'm not a clean person. My conscience has to be clean, and she does it through cleaning the house. And her mother, she would do sleepwalking. So we can just give small hints, and between the lines you can see that yes, trauma is everywhere in the text, but we are not able to put that into words. Yeah.
And secondly, ma'am, in this slide, we come across again some of a couple of words, right? Like families, child, and grandparents. So I was thinking of the quotes of William Wordsworth. Child is the father of man, right? A very famous quote of William Wordsworth. So can you comment on this quote with the reference to this text or like this concept?
Well, I'm not from English studies, so I don't know in what context he has said, but I think it's a very good observation. Child is
the father of man.
Child is the father of man. Yeah, I think it's correct, And in this book also it said what kind of man he will become if he cannot feel the pain. Yeah. So it's like your activities are somehow reflected in the kid, and kid is someone who's teaching the father. I don't know if I
okay. Thank you so much. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, Prachi.
I was just thinking about the point he made that animals don't like feel the past or, but I would like to make a point here that animals do feel the past because if there is a dog, for example, and has met an car accident, so whenever he sees a car, he will stay away or he will not just be on the road.
Yeah.
For example, my personal pet has seen some things and now the trauma is there.
Yeah.
The only thing is that words are not there that the animal can express, which we are doing as human and depicting our trauma, sadness and everything. But yes, animal do feel pain and trauma.
Yes, that's true. And I would quote my professor from JNU, Professor Sasalati. He's no more, and he did this research on animal language. And in the animal language, it's like simply because we feel we are the superior, what do you call it? Species, na? The way we speak, dogs cannot speak because their vocal cord is not developed like that. If they have to shout, they need to, raise their like neck, and to, so on such small evidences, we have made a thesis. Right? Some says the dogs have, their mind is only equal to a 3-year-old kid. But then we have dogs finding drugs, now German Shepherd. And if it's 3-year-old, then he's he's too smart for a 3-year. Now, and it's like, we don't want to learn their language. We don't know how to learn their language. But with maybe AI, AI is also using this, the scientists are using movements of ants to train this AI, like how these ants are, so they are now focusing they are saying enough of human intelligence. Now we need to go for understanding plant intelligence. People say plants are dumb, they don't talk or they don't do. So now there have been researchers, that actually say that no, they are talking. Plants are also talking, and so I always feel something that we don't understand. We say you don't have that. Now we say AI doesn't have consciousness. We have. Right? So this is something you cannot think like human. We can. We are human. So we need to change our perspective. Why does she need to think like human? She is good enough what she is doing. Why do we need to compare everything? Why can't we change our understanding of, understanding the other perspective? We don't need to make it everything humanistic, as centered around human. Or maybe it's time we can see if animals have past, what were they doing in their last, they might be like cat has several lives, I heard. No? So I don't know. So, yeah.
Hello, ma'am. Uh, First of all, I would like to thank you for remembering me that I have been silent. So now it's time for me to speak and ask one question.
Thank you. That's a success.
Okay, ma'am, as you were talking about that story time and discourse time, like story time is basically, it talks about what of that story means sequence is more focused. And regarding discourse time, how the author chooses to present certain events.
Yes.
So my question would be, if we consider the concept of Dewey from Henry Bergson, where he speaks that it is basically about the subjective experience of time, means how as a subject we experience times differently,
Yeah.
like where our past, present and future gets intermingled, and memory there basically plays an important role. So I want to know uh, where does this Dewey would be more fitting towards? Like, is it more fitting towards that story time, or is it more relevant towards discourse time? What is your take on it?
Well, I would say it is if like you ask me personally, then I would say the discourse time. But many people say story time is something that we create. It does not exist. Now we create that story time. So it may go in that line also. Uh, mm, Nowadays, like we have cognitive narratologist also. They don't simply focus on this duration aspect or jury aspect of this interplay of story time and discourse time, but these cognitive narratologists, they have said that enough, we have this Russian, enough with the Russian formalismus, structuralismus, every time asking how, but now we also need to see what impact the text is generating. Now we have in English, we have novels. When you read for example, these crime novels, you read something and you don't understand, and then you read again and again you don't understand it. If you go back and again this thing doesn't help you. So these novels are called aggressive novels, right? They are putting you under so much of a stress, and it's a deliberate strategy used in crime thrillers, where you will have almost similar names, or you will say, oh, so much of information has lost, or did I skip something, do I need to go back and read it again? And these are the strategies that cognitive narratologists focus on, and not simply on this aspect of duty. Yeah. Thank you.
I want to talk about this. So I watched this documentary recently, The Trials at Nuremberg, and there was this court, and there were like four lawyers from US, France, all the countries, the elite forces, and the USSR, and they were sitting, and the top commanding officers who participated in World War II with Hitler. So they were on the trial, and the judge asked, "Sind Sie schuldig? Are you guilty?" So they said, "Nein, wir sind nicht." So it was like, no, we are not. So they had this, or either they were silent. This was the case. So I just want to point out, like, I've not read this novel, but there is another novel which I was also talking to you about, The Land of Green Plums. So in this novel, there is also father of this grandfather, and he is doing all these. He has his appointments of going to barber. He's getting his nails cleaned, haircut proper, and cleanliness and everything. And but he was a participant of this in the war. He was also a sort of a commanding officer or a guard at a concentration camp or something. So he was not a survivor, but he was a participant. He was a contributor in the war. So he is also silent in the novel. He is completely silent. Can we say here this silence, this imagery, as a sign of protest of their obsession for Wiedergutmachen?
Yeah, that's a very good observation.
Because
Yeah.
they may
The
be
AFD
silent
party,
for a,
the
because
way
if we
AFD
talk about this the elections which are going in Germany right now, the party AfD, so they are only this maybe counting the time for them to again rule in Germany with the Nazi ideology, because this is what is going on right now.
Yeah, well, Alice Weidels.
Because they also want to exclude the immigrants. They don't want, they are not like German government is doing for the immigrants to give them the space there, but there are parties which are not supporting this idea at all. So can we say in this, like in these novels where grandfather figure is silent as a protest of this Wiedergutmachen?
Well, it's a serious question, but I put my hope that Alice Weidel will take wiser decisions, and I hope it should not repeat, because their focus has also on also nie wieder ist jetzt. No, never again is now. It's the time you need to take action. So, yeah, I agree with what you're saying.
The figure of the grandfather, the grandfather is silent here. So this was my actually question, that is this can be seen as a protest of like they're just waiting for the right moment.
I don't know. I will not comment on that.
Actually, silence could be interpreted in many ways.
Yes.
It could be a protest, as she's pointing out, or it could be as guilt or trauma.
Yeah.
I think there we need to observe the individual's past life, yeah, and from there, that observation, we can conclude something that, okay, whether this is trauma or protest or guilt. Because in Germany, if we have, like, as a German scholar, I have communicated few people, so there is guilt generation also.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is a generation who is totally in guilt.
Yeah.
And yesterday or day before yesterday, we were talking about climate, where the today's generation is blaming the previous generation because of this climate changes and environment. So we can connect those things. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is
Yeah, absolutely agree what you are saying, and it's also, I would say that it's Germans are nice in the way at least they are acknowledging, they are apologizing openly. Like president comes and apologize for what they have done, and at the same time we have UK. They will never apologize even for the Jallianwala Bagh program. They will never say a word of sorry. Now, if you follow like newspapers, so I think around 2002 or something, uh, or maybe later 12, I'm not sure. This Prince William came, and Indians were like, this time we'll make him say sorry. ना इस बार तो बुलवा के रहेंगे सॉरी कुछ भी हो जाए. And then they took him to the memorial, and Queen paid, she was a bit sensible, she paid her homage, and this William said that the numbers are wrong, not these many people died. I knew I was there in the army. That was his response. So forget about getting a sorry from UK. They are not even ready to acknowledge that these many people have died at that time. So I say that at least Germany is putting that effort. They are opening Holocaust memorial everywhere. Now they have included this in the syllabus. They are not glorifying what they have done. Whereas I don't know, I have not seen the school curricula of UK. So I'm sure they are very proud of their colonial history. Right.
Yeah. Hi, ma'am. So I would like to comment on the narratology that was being discussed as since I'm working on narratives. It was very interesting to know about the German theorist and the idea that was put forward. Here as you said, the spaces, there are so many gaps when people talk about trauma, even the silence, even the narration that they get. I'll connect it to my area of work. Since I've worked with two sorts of people who are survivors and also abusers or say convicts of violence. In both the cases, when survivors were narrating about their experiences, they might get shut down at some point. They might repeat things which has been, there is a purposeful forgetfulness, and also sometimes they unconsciously forget things that we know that's a part of trauma. And also sometimes the linearity in their remembrance, that is in collecting their identifying the timeline of the things happened throughout their life, even that gets disrupted when it comes to the survivors. And when it comes in the case of abusers or say convicts of trauma, convicts of violence, they actually interpret it in such a way that they justify their actions, or they kind of when the same question is being repeated, they give a different answer. Only through those pauses, as you said, the pauses, the ellipses, the body language, that we get to identify, because they have a lot of false statements in between. Only then we could identify that thing. So it was very relatable to, though I'm not working in the war narratives, the idea of narratology, and it was very helpful, and thank you for that.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Hello, ma'am. Thank you for this
Hello.
beautiful lecture.
Hello.
I haven't read this particular novel, but it reminds me of another novel by a very prominent Indian novelist, that is Amitabh Ghosh, and the novel is The Shadow Lines. Here also, the grandmother, she faced the traumatic event of partition, but she cannot talk about that. She cannot talk about the violence and the atrocities of partition. But later in her life, there is a kind of belatedness of memory, and she talks to her grandchild about the violence of partition. So my question is that the silence she carried in all her life, is it work as a coping mechanism, or is it a memory gap?
I'm sorry, Shadowline is such a important text and I have not read it. So I'm from German studies, but I do like Amitav Ghosh and his writings a lot. I would say there's different way to interpret it. It might be her coping mechanism, or she must not have got that kind of environment, where she can talk about the traumas. When some like COVID-19 or any event happened, our first thing is to, shush about that, that horrific event. Nobody wants to talk. I think that silence could have been her coping mechanism to survive, but then somehow, even with the Holocaust survivors, they have come now to talk about the horrors. Immediately after 1945, in German we have Nachkriegsliteratur, like after war literature. And after one thing that is there, that nobody wanted to talk about Holocaust. They said that we want to do constructive things, we need to build a new generation, we need to change the language. They stopped using certain words, they stopped using, they made lots of changes in the language, in the writing style, everything. And but on Holocaust, they kept mum for some time, but of course later on they started engaging with it. So that's my observation.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Ma'am, I was just wondering from the point of view of memoirs. So this very act of remembering what I should write, I was just wondering if we can question the authority of a memoirist in that terms. That is this like the event that you have written down? I mean, is that even a real event? I mean, it's real, but the thing is that you are having the authority of wiping out some memories and then focusing on some. Does that reflect exactly what you went through? Can we question that authority of memoirists?
Yes, of course we can question it. And your question about authenticity, so biographies, and they are always looked down upon for this reason, that you are you are censoring it yourself, you are editing, you want to present yourself in a particular way. And even you would be surprised, even Anna Frank's diary was edited by her father. The first edition that came was an edited version. He said, oh, she's talking very, adult things. As a child, she should not talk about such things. So that was also edited. But as a literary scientist, or I would say as a narratologist myself, I would say, many people say the I narratives are not to be relied upon. But the narratologists have agreed that we do rely on it. Because even if the person has Alzheimer's, he's talking from his emotions. And his emotions are, not something that we can just ignore. So I narrator is absolutely, it's someone who's talking from, as an observer. So their narrations are something that we would, absolutely rely. So if anything is there on the text, I would say I would not question its authenticity, but I would only focus on whether what the person is saying. It may not be correct, or it may not be like historically. It might be historically challengeable. That's for later time to decide. But for now, I would trust.
Also, the sad part of this whole publishing unit is that, like, sometimes you have to follow certain directions of the publishers. So that is also something I feel affects
It's
what
not,
you write.
actually, it's not just for the authors. Even, there are categories among Holocaust survivors. Now, there are more important Holocaust survivors and there are less important Holocaust survivors. So you can imagine the degrees of discrimination, discrimination that is going on already among the Holocaust survivor. Those who have worked very closely with Nazis are more important. Their accounts are more important. Those who have not, their accounts are less important. And it is actually happening.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Yeah, question? Okay. So more questions, comments? No? Okay, so we can call it a day and we get on to the important work that we need to do. Okay, so thank you so much, and I thank Amy for coming here and giving such heart-touching speech at the end. That was very sweet of you. Thank you so much.